Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have Ministerian, great to see you, Ministerian. Hope you're well. We have Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you. Arl, great to have you on. Blue Cat, great to see you. Gene T, great to have you on too. Hope you're well. You and me, great to see you once again. Laura, great to have you on. We also have, let me see. Tiny Demolition Lover, hope you're well. Great to see you on tonight. We also have Pete Robbins, great to see you, Pete. Hope you're fine. Good evening, Michael Fabricant, caught on camera in Parliament today, laughing as Starmer told a sad story about a guy who could not see his wife who was dying of COVID in hospital. Yeah, I saw that, and I was thinking of doing a video on it. And the fact, as far as I know, the man who Starmer was talking about is actually from Michael Fabricant's constituency, which just adds an extra insult to the injury. Mark Tefler, great to see you. Enzo the God, great to have you on. FSM is the dog. FSM certainly is the dog. Great to see you once again. Hope you're well. We have Chatty Rat, great to see you, Chatty Rat. Mega Hairy Bomb, great to see you. Audrey, hope you're well, Max. Evening, Max. And all your usual suspects. Hi Killer, hope Killer is on. Hope you're well. Thanks for moderating. We have Just Saying, great to see you. We also have let me see, Jew Peacock. If you read Jew's name and surname together very quickly, you'll know why I'm laughing. We have Roisin, great to see you, Roisin. We have CGM, great to see you. Who else have we got? Nicholas, great to see you. Catherine, great to have you on. Sugar Free, great to see you. Hope you're well. We also have Random Scottish History, great to see you. Hope you're well tonight. Lewis Jones, great to see you. Magic, great to see you on too. We also have Katrina Bryce, great to see you, Katrina. And so many more. I can't say hello to everyone. I see Fearless is on as well, John O'Sullivan, and so many more. So guys, thanks for coming on tonight. Hope you are having a great week. I hope you had a good Easter. Hope you were able to see our Sunday brunch, and look out for the next one, next Sunday, of course. We have a very interesting guest on Sunday. Well, of course, we're going to talk about Boris Johnson tonight. Yay, Boris Johnson! We can't get away from Boris Johnson. But first of all, I want to talk about this Brexit-ish related story. It says here, Britain could fall into recession this summer, says experts. Inflation will limit UK consumer spending power, with energy costs a particular problem. Britain's economy is at growing risk of falling into a summer recession amid the biggest squeeze on household income since the mid-1950s, as soaring inflation curtails consumer spending power, forecasts have said. Economists said that the double blow was from the slowing post-lockdown growth and the rising costs after Russia's invasion of Ukraine could result in a fall of gross domestic product GDP for 2 consecutive quarters, which is the definition of a recession. So a recession is coming, even though inflation is running pretty high. After the weaker than expected growth performance in February, and with the inflation rate reaching the highest level since 1992 last month, City forecasters said UK GDP was now on track to grow at about 1% in the first quarter of 2022, before slipping into reverse this summer. Analysts said activity would be reduced by an extra bank holiday for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June, as public holidays usually lead to a drop in overall economic output because people are on holiday. The return to lower rates of activity in the health sector after a winter rush to vaccinate people against COVID-19, as well as households reining in their spending amid a soaring cost of living, are also expected to weigh on growth. So when Boris Johnson talks about the fastest growing economy in the G7, well, obviously that was a lie, but this is another black mark against the Tories. And why am I talking about this? It's a depressing story, but this is something that the Labour Party and the other opposition parties should be jumping on. There is a recession coming. The Tories are presiding over a recession. This should be front page news. This should be a rallying cry for the opposition parties, because the Tories try to paint themselves as the party of good governance. Yeah, I know it's a big pile of crap, but it sticks in the minds of the public. So the public, when they come, if you ask a random member of the public who's better on economics, who's better on the economy, they'll, for I don't know what reason, maybe because they've been brainwashed over the last number of decades, but being force-fed this narrative that, well, it's the Tories that are better on the economy. Well, if there is a recession taking place, then the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the SNP, Greens, they need to use this against the Tories and say, look, how can they be the party of governance or financial governance? How can they be the party of the economy if we're in a recession? And this could be something that would sink the Tories. Ministerian, thank you so much for that super chat. Boris is a puny with a C. I'm trying to get that. So thanks for that super chat, Ministerian. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Well, we'll get to Boris right away. So here is Boris Johnson's apology in the House of Commons today. Yes, an apology. Well, it seems this one was better than some of the other ones, but of course he doesn't mean it.
With permission, I'll update the House on the government's response to events at home and abroad during the Easter recess. I will come to Ukraine in a moment, since I've just left a virtual meeting with President Biden, President Macron, Chancellor Scholz, and 8 other world leaders. But let me begin in all humility by saying that on the 12th of April, I received a fixed penalty notice relating to an event in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. I paid the fine immediately, and I offered the British people a full apology. And I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House. As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now. Let me also say, not by way of mitigation or excuse, but purely because it explains my previous words in this House, that it did not occur to me then or subsequently that a gathering in the Cabinet room just before a vital meeting on COVID strategy could amount to a breach of the rules.
Now, so the problem with all of this is that there are other breaches of the rules in the pipeline. There are other fines, it seems, coming down the road. So Boris Johnson can't use this excuse. Of course, he's using this excuse now, and then he uses a different excuse in the future. But he's using the excuse, I didn't know I broke the rules. And I lied to Parliament when I said that no rules were broken. If he had come to Parliament at the very... See, a lot of this could have been avoided if he actually, when he broke the rules, actually came out at that moment and said, look, I'm sorry, we broke the rules, it was a mistake, and we won't do it again. But the thing is, he did it again for another 20 times, it seems. So you can't come out and say, yeah, look, I didn't know what I was doing. It was a mistake. I paid the fine and let's move on. Because you broke the rules more than once. And obviously there were people around him. Obviously, well, he was telling the public you shouldn't be meeting in more than, groups of 2 people or more than 3 households and things like this at that time. So how can he be sitting in an office with these people delivering him a cake or whatever it was and say, this seems normal? No. Obviously, he just didn't care. He thought he'd get away with it. Told people around him, look, don't say anything. Nobody said anything until later on it came out.
I repeat, that was my mistake. And
Katrina Bryce is correct. He could have avoided this by not having loads of parties. Yes, even better.
I apologise for it unreservedly. I respect the outcome of the police investigation, which is still underway. And I can only say that I will respect their decision-making and always take the appropriate steps. And as the House will know, I have already taken significant steps to change the way things work in Number 10. And
once again, it's this blaming Number 10. Us, the environment at Number 10. Oh, there's nothing I could do because there was this environment that I inherited from Number 10. You are the boss of Number 10. You are the one who decides who runs Number 10. If you don't like who's running the place, then you fire them and you replace them with people who are competent. Has anyone been fired? You can't say, look, the way Number 10 operates is less than perfect. There's a bad environment there. Then how come none of these people have been laid off? How come they haven't been replaced? How come we're not seeing a list of jobs available on the Number 10 website? Look, positions available for, spokesperson or this or that.
it is precisely because I know that so many people are angry and disappointed that I feel an even greater sense of obligation to deliver on the priorities of the British people and to respond in the best traditions of our country to Putin's barbaric onslaught against Ukraine.
I can't resign because there's a war on.
Our Ukrainian friends are fighting for the life of their nation, and they achieved the greatest feat of arms of the 21st century by repelling the Russian assault on Kiev. And the whole House will share my admiration for their heroism and courage. Putin arrogantly assumed that he would capture Kiev in a matter of days. And now the blackened carcasses of his tanks and heavy armour litter the approaches to the capital on both banks of the Dnieper and are smouldering monuments to his failure. Having pulverized the invaders' armoured spearheads, the Ukrainians then...
And now he's talking about Ukraine. So the apology, did you hear it? Hope you didn't miss it because, it was in there somewhere. He said, I apologize. You have to resign. I've said this before. If it was a once-off, he could have come out early and said, look, I broke the rules. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. It was unintentional. And then it would have been, in the newspapers for a few days and then returned to normal. But the fact that he broke the rule probably 20 times, he can't use that. He can't go down that route. So instead he has to deal with it in this way of ignoring it, suggesting that no rules were broken, then deny that he actually knew what was going on, then suggest that, yeah, he knew what was going on, but he didn't know he was breaking the rules, then apologize, then receive the fine, then apologize for the anger related to the fine. It's pathetic. The reasonable thing will be to resign. This is not like a speeding ticket, okay? You did it. This would be like driving through red lights every day. But even worse than that, because your actions undermined... We don't know how many people died, but we know that his actions undermined public confidence in the rules. So many people probably didn't wear a mask because they saw Boris Johnson walking around without a mask on. Many people didn't follow the rules because they heard about Boris Johnson breaking the rules. He's supposed to set a standard. Yes, he can make a mistake, but you apologize for the mistake and you move on. But instead, what he's doing is he's been trying to hide the mistake, attacking anyone who suggested he did make a mistake, then lying about it, both inside and outside Parliament. And now he's trying to say, well, look, I can't resign because, well, there's a war on. Reagan Ali, thanks so much for that super chat. This is the man who just doesn't care. Dragging the whole of the UK through the mud is disgusting. That he has no shame of his actions. He has no shame because this is all a joke to him. This is all his part of his playground, as Peter Hennessy. And I have to make a comment. Apologies in the video I uploaded with Peter Hennessy because I chose the wrong Peter Hennessy image. Fool on me. Shame on me, I should say. So I should correct. I just want to correct it now. In the video with Peter Hennessy, that is Peter Hennessy, but that's a different Peter Hennessy, not the historian Peter Hennessy. But they do actually look quite similar. But Peter Hennessy said that Boris Johnson has defaced, undermined the role of Prime Minister, and he has to resign. It's the honourable thing. But then Boris Johnson is not honourable. Boris Johnson's entire career is based on lies. Bendy bananas in Brussels. The racism in his newspaper articles in the early 2000s. When he became mayor of London, lying about what he was going to do. Then when he left, lying about the disaster he left the mayorship in. So when Sadiq Khan took over, was it Sadiq Khan or was it no, it was Sadiq Khan. When he took over, it was a bit of a disaster. Then he became foreign secretary, lying about things when he was foreign secretary, going to Italy for a booze up with his Russian mate, lying about that, lying in Parliament. It's all about lying. Thanks for that super chat, Reagan Elite. Fearless Wolf, thank you so much. Blair and Bush years don't look as bad as we thought. Yes. I always say, look, when you look at people like Trump and you look at people like Boris Johnson, well, not even Trump, like Trump, or I better take a step back. When you look at people like George W. Bush, at the time I thought, it can't get any worse than this. And then I thought, as soon as he left office, yes, it will get worse, because it's always going to get worse. And then along came Trump. We thought it couldn't get any worse than Trump. And then along came Boris Johnson as Prime Minister in 2019. Can it get any worse than Boris Johnson? I don't know. Mark Francois, Michael Fabricant as Prime Minister. Really, it's a joke now, but Boris Johnson, it was a joke to suggest that Boris Johnson would be Prime Minister 10 years ago. Thanks for that super chat. Magic, thank you so much. We fired 3 prime ministers during war. We need to make 4. Yes. I'm missing a few super chats. Sorry. Reagan Elite. George, thanks so much, George. Is the government operating a war cabinet? Exactly. Very good question. When Boris Johnson uses the argument, well, we can't go, I can't resign because there's a war on. Where is the war cabinet? Who is the war minister? There is none. It's just a scam. It's just an attempt to convince the public that, yes, I can't resign because it's very, very important. And as Magic said, we fired 3 prime ministers during war. We need to make it 4. That's true. Thanks guys for those super chats. Boris Johnson is not indispensable. So I want to move on. So it says here, MPs. So what's going to happen next Thursday? Boris Johnson is going to face a vote. It says here, MPs to vote over whether Prime Minister should be investigated for misleading Parliament over Partygate. So there are 2 aspects to this. So there is the Partygate. So whatever happened, whatever rules or laws Boris Johnson broke outside Parliament. Okay, so he broke COVID rules. He's been investigated by the police over that. Sue Gray as well. But there's also the problem inside Parliament. Boris Johnson has lied to Parliament. Well, Boris Johnson always lies to Parliament, but in this specific case, he has lied to Parliament on a number of occasions. And it seems that both the Labour Party in particular want to form a commission or a committee to investigate if Boris Johnson lied to Parliament, misled Parliament, which is a breach of the ministerial code, which Boris Johnson should resign over. But the problem with the ministerial code is the only person who has the power to enforce it is this guy here, Boris Johnson. So the Prime Minister, the book ends at the Prime Minister, and it's only the Prime Minister who can fire somebody through the ministerial code. And, well, Boris Johnson's not going to fire himself. The most this can achieve is to expose Johnson as a liar in Parliament. Now, what could be an interesting outcome of this, and I don't know if this is possible, if Boris Johnson is found guilty of lying to Parliament, having broken the ministerial code, then if he's found guilty of that, then surely it would allow MPs to call him a liar in Parliament, because he had been proven to be a liar in Parliament. Because there is a rule in Parliament that you can't call an MP or a minister a liar. But if Boris Johnson has been found guilty by a parliamentary committee of lying, of misleading Parliament, then surely you should be allowed to call him a liar. Anyway, it says here, Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle granted a request from opposition MPs for a vote which will be held on Thursday, and which Sky News understands will seek to refer Mr Johnson for investigation by the Privileges Committee. The Speaker's ruling came as the Prime Minister prepared to face Parliament for the first time since he was fined last week for attending a gathering to mark his birthday in June 2020, in breach of his own government's social distancing rules. The debate on Thursday will centre on the question of whether Mr Johnson misled MPs when he initially said, after claims about parties in Downing Street for surface, no rules were broken. It will take place at a time when the Prime Minister himself is scheduled to be away on a visit to India. So it seems that maybe Boris Johnson is going to cancel his meeting in India and return and face the music in this committee. Sir Lindsay told MPs that it was not for him to determine whether or not the minister had committed a contempt, but rather whether there was an arguable case to be examined. So he thinks there is a case to be examined. It's important to remember that the Speaker of the House has very little power over the conduct of MPs. It's just the running of the Parliament that he really does. Which is frustrating to listen to, because Boris Johnson can lie his arse off, but you can't call Boris Johnson a liar, even though everyone in the House of Commons knows he's a liar, including himself. The Speaker ruled, having considered the issue, that Labour leader Keir Starmer could table a motion for debate. Labour sources said that the committee has wide-ranging powers, which would mean it could ask for civil servant Sue Gray's yet-to-be-published report into the affair as well as photos, and that it has the power to recommend sanctions. But for the investigation to take place, opposition parties will have to persuade Tories disquieted by the Prime Minister's behaviour to join them in voting for the probe. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey urged Conservatives to do their patriotic duty in Thursday's vote, while Labour Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry early told Sky News that the Tory MPs should look at their consciences. Yes, how many of them actually have a conscience? However, one backbench critic of the Prime Minister, Tobias Ellwood, appeared to rebuff the notion of cooperating with opposition parties, telling Sky News that this was a matter to be kept in-house. So if Boris Johnson lied to Parliament it should be kept. What does he mean in-house? In Parliament, or it should be kept within the Conservative Party? Police have been investigating 12 events in Downing Street and Whitehall during 2020 and 2021 when lockdown rules were alleged to have been broken, and so far more than 50 fines have been announced. Last week it was revealed Mr. Johnson had been fined over a gathering on his birthday in June 2020, and his wife Carrie and Chancellor Rishi Sunak also received punishment. How much did they receive? Because I think Rishi Sunak received £50, but we don't know how much Carrie received. And also, Carrie can't be fired. That's another thing. Fired from what? Consultancy role. Downing Street is understood to have to be braced for more fines for the Prime Minister, and reports over the weekend painted him as an instigator of leaving drinks for a staff member in November 2020, another of the events being investigated. So this is a story that's going to run and run. Before we move on to this, I just want to read some of your comments. Within the Tory party, they think themselves above Parliament. Yes, of course. Parliament is a joke to them. Parliament is a game, especially to Boris Johnson. Elwood, what happens in the House stays in the House, says Sugar Free, which is disappointing. It is. I expected more from him. He's generally somebody who's a bit more... He's usually someone who actually cares a bit more about the rule of law. Every journalist should say in interviews, does Boris Johnson lie? At every interview, just for the just for the lols. To be fair, he joined the Conservative Party. He's been having one every day. They're probably scared of angering Carrie. The film didn't end well. Yes, don't anger Carrie. She'll get her revenge. Yes, the movie. How much does Boris cost, including home decor, flights in personal jet, yacht Britannia? He's going to demand more than the Queen and declare a republic. Maybe. It's almost like it's hard to imagine Johnson resigning. Like he's such a narcissist. It's all, in a similar way to Trump. Trump never really resigned. Trump's presidency ended, but Trump never said, "Yes, I lost and I'm resigning." As far as I know, he or if he did, he immediately did a 180 and said, No, I didn't fail. It was stolen and stuff like this. At least Carrie lets them eat cake. Boris may fire Carrie. He's got previous. You should have heard the crap coming out of Brandon Lewis today on Kay Burley's show. I heard bits of it, yes. The idea that, it's a bit like a parking fine or a speeding ticket. And, Tony Blair also got a speeding ticket or something like that. Yes, but Tony Blair didn't write the rules for the roads. It would be like, let's look at it from, let's look at it from the speeding ticket point of view. If you want to go down that road, which it isn't equivalent, but let's say it was. It would be like the transport secretary, breaking the speed limit on a number of occasions and getting fines for it. After a while, people would say, look, you shouldn't stay in your position. Or not even the transport secretary, it'd be the road safety spec. Because Boris Johnson was the one delivering these rules. He was the one presenting these rules. He was the one in charge of writing them with his with people from Number 10. He signed them off. I'm not saying that he invented each of the rules, but he had his input in the delivering of these rules to the public. He was the one telling the public, you need to stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. We don't need an analogy, really. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I just want to read this tweet from Rachel Clark, who is an NHS doctor, and she posted this. Quite mind-blowing that Boris Johnson's excuse to the Commons for breaking the law and then lying about it to the nation is that he didn't understand his own laws. Even though at 5 p.m. every night he told us the rules were life and death. Even though he signed off on this. And he signed off on this poster that was sent out in 2020. Look into her eyes and tell her you never bend the rules. And this was a COVID-19 patient, and the slogan below, of course, stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. And Boris Johnson did not stay home. He had a party. He did not protect the NHS, and he did not save lives. He risked lives. And I said this before, the people at the top have extra responsibility because they set an example. You know, if you or I break the rules, most people will not know about it. But if a senior member of government breaks the rules, people will know about it. That's why it's important that when as soon as it happens, they apologize and they resign if it's something serious like that. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. If the Tories oust Boris Johnson, then we're doomed. If they have any decency left at all, then I hope they will support a national unity government. It would require the Conservative Party splitting in some way, and I don't see that happening at the moment. There isn't enough support, and this is really frustrating because you have the disaster with the pandemic, Boris Johnson's support within the party, not outside the party, but within the party, because that's where it's more important. Because when it comes to a general election, yes, Boris Johnson's support outside the party is important. But within the party, we have to see the real cracks appearing. And there are no real cracks. There are a few hairline cracks here and there, but not enough to bring the house down. And the Tories will not oust Johnson at this stage because he's not damaging them enough. And because there isn't a natural successor. There isn't somebody waiting to take over. Now, until recently, I would have put money on Rishi Sunak, but that went down pretty quickly, like a lead balloon, over the rise in national insurance contributions and his disastrous PR campaign. So, and of course the issue with his wife eventually paying taxes that she didn't have to pay, but she paid it in order to protect his image. It was not for herself, it was to protect his image, and that didn't work out. So that was, she spent 20 million pounds to pay taxes, and it had zero impact on improving Rishi Sunak's poll numbers or his approval rating. It actually went down, I think, after that. So that was a waste of a few million pounds, wasn't it? Better off just trying to weather the storm. But anyway, so I don't see a government of national unity anytime soon, because there isn't enough to push to split the party. There would have to be something that would split the party in two, where you would have one half of the party going against the Conservatives and voting with the opposition. This would render Boris Johnson's government toothless. They wouldn't be able to do anything. He'd be a lame duck, and then eventually there would be a call for a general election, and then you could have a government of national unity, or you would have some sort of government of national unity also before that, if members of the Conservative Party agreed to put Starmer in charge. But that's the problem. I don't think you'll find anyone, even behind closed doors, I doubt you'll find any Tory who'd say, yeah, I'd be okay with Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. So we're not at that stage yet. Very, very far away. Something has to happen for that to happen. For that to come about. Richard Turner, thanks so much for that super chat. Like Starmer said, last minister to lie about the speeding fine ended in prison. But I don't see, thanks for that, Super Dad, but I don't see Boris Johnson ending up in prison, unfortunately. I think he's very safe at the moment. Fearless Wolf, thank you so much. Max, we're waiting on the chosen one to bring balance back to UK politics. Who is the chosen one? Yes. Maybe they haven't been born yet. Look, a lot of these problems would go away if first past the post was replaced with proportional representation. So you would not have this extreme wing within the Conservative Party. You wouldn't have this UKIP wing. You wouldn't have this type of appeal to the racists and bigots and the lowest common denominator that you see currently in the Conservative Party. So you wouldn't have that. Something good about proportional representation is it dilutes the extremes. You can end up having a party, you could end up having a government with Nigel Farage in it. That's a horrible thought, but Nigel Farage, his policies would be diluted to an extent where if he did form a government with, if he formed a government with another party, a bigger party, his policies would pretty much go out the window. Nigel Farage is more about personality and power. Having a bit of it, and it would be a situation where you'd have a centre-right government and maybe a small right-wing party, and they'd throw them a few bones, but they wouldn't really rule the party. The problem with first past the post is now you've seen the Conservatives adopt a lot of UKIP's policies, a lot of Reform UK's policies, a lot of the BNP's policies even, especially when it comes to Rwanda. I dozed off, just woke up and realised I'm not in Kansas anymore. Anyway, let's move on. This was Keir Starmer's response to Boris Johnson's apology.
The Prime Minister knows what he is. And so he drags everyone else down with him. The more people debase themselves parroting his absurd defences, the more the public will believe all politicians are the same, all as bad as each other, and that suits this Prime Minister just fine. This morning, I spoke to John Robinson, a constituent of the member for Lichfield. I want to tell you his story. When his wife died of COVID, John and his family obeyed the Prime Minister's rules. He didn't see her in hospital. He didn't hold her hand as she died. Their daughters and grandchildren drove 100 miles up the motorway, clutching a letter from the funeral director in case they were questioned by the police. They didn't have a service in the...
Did you see that? Did you see this mophead laughing about this?
They didn't have a service in the...
And then he sees that he's on camera, so he stops laughing. And as I say, and it is actually his constituency. It is Michael Fabricant's constituency. So Michael Fabricant laughing about this, laughing about a story where a family went to a funeral clutching a death certificate in case the police stopped them, and they'd be fined.
They didn't have a service in the church. John's son-in-law stayed away because he would have been the forbidden seventh mourner. Doesn't the Prime Minister realise that John would have given the world to hold his dying wife's hand, even if it was just for 9 minutes? But he didn't, because he followed the Prime Minister's rules. Rules that we now know the Prime Minister blithely, repeatedly and deliberately ignored. After months of insulting excuses, today's half-hearted apology will never be enough for John Robinson. If the Prime Minister had any respect for John and the millions like him who sacrificed everything to follow the rules, he'd resign. But he won't, because he doesn't respect John. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame. Looking past the member for Lichfield and the nodding dogs in the cabinet, there are many decent, honourable members on the benches opposite who do respect John Robinson, who do respect the British public. They know the damage the Prime Minister is doing. They know things can't go on as they are. And they know it's their responsibility to bring an end to this shameful chapter. Today I urge them once again, don't follow in the slipstream of an out-of-touch, out-of-control Prime Minister. Put their conscience first. Put their country first. Put John Robinson first. And remove the Prime Minister from office. Yes. Bring decency, honesty and integrity back into our politics. And stop the denigration of everything that this country stands for.
Wow, that was a wonderful speech. And the fact that he brought up a real story here, somebody who has really suffered here. And this man, and I don't think Keir Starmer picked it out, but it was probably something that was read to him, and he said, yes, we need to highlight this story. The fact that it was from a Tory backbencher's constituency, Michael Fabricant's constituency. Will it have an impact? I hope it will, because the man highlighted in this story is like a lot of people around the UK, a lot of people who followed the rules, who did the right thing. And now they're looking on and seeing Boris Johnson make excuses for himself while he had parties. It's not like Boris Johnson went to a funeral and broke the rules. No, Boris Johnson had a party while breaking the rules. Boris Johnson who set the rules. Complete and utter disconnect these Tories have. And the fact that Michael Fabricant was laughing about this is, well, I'm not really surprised. Ministerian, thank you so much for that super chat. Those Tory oafs make me sick to my stomach. I don't know if it's because they have their scarves wrapped so tightly around their necks that it cuts off the supply of air to their brains. The supply of blood, I should say, oxygenated blood to their brains. That they disconnect when Keir Starmer is speaking, and all they say is, okay, this guy is our enemy. Doesn't matter what he says. Doesn't matter if he tells the truth or tells lies. He's always our enemy. And that's sad, because it should be a case when a politician speaks, we view what they say on the merit of what is said, not on who's actually saying it. So could Boris Johnson deliver such a speech? If it was written down, yes, he could, but Boris Johnson would not mean it. That's the problem. I think Keir Starmer means it. I do think Keir Starmer is showing empathy here. And of course there has to be MPs within the Conservative Party who have some empathy, who listen to that and say, yes, it's wrong that the Prime Minister broke the rules. Some of them are just sycophants. Whatever Johnson says is gospel, and whatever the others say is the word of the devil, to use religious analogies. Will Brimmer, thanks so much for that super chat. Can you play the Alex Cunningham question, and then the female voice Nadine Dorris that you can hear reply? I don't have it, so let me see if I can find it. Just bear with me for a moment. Alex Cunningham. Let me see if I can get it. No, I can't find it. Apologies for that, Will. If somebody can send me the link, I'll definitely show it. Apologies for that. Maybe one of the moderators, if you can find that link to, maybe it's on Twitter. I don't know. Sorry about that. Thanks for the super chat. Magic, thanks again for the super chat. If the Prime Minister has not deliberately misled the House, then there is no issue with asking the Standards Committee to investigate and confirm this. Yeah, that's correct. If Boris Johnson has not broken any rules, then there isn't a problem with asking a Standards Committee to investigate, because it would come up with nothing. But Boris Johnson doesn't want it to investigate. That's the problem. The Tories don't want the Standards Committee to investigate. Well said, yes.
Sir William, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I apologise once again profusely to John Robinson, to all those who lost loved ones, particularly those who suffered during the pandemic.
Yes, we've heard it before. We heard it. The worst was when Boris Johnson apologized. I think it was apologized the first time, and then he went into the tea room in the House of Commons and said, "But I did nothing wrong." So when he was apologizing, he was lying as well. So why should we believe him this time? Why should anyone believe anything Boris Johnson? Because if you continually lie, then people will never believe you, even when you're telling the truth. Anyway, let's. Before we move on, I want to show you a funny video, as we have during a little comedy moment before we go. What have you lost? No, there was some QA library. It was Will Brimmer had wanted me to show a video, but I don't have the link. If somebody can find the link, let me know. Post it in the chat. Hello words, yes. I'm at a loss, to be honest, Max. That's not what I want to hear. An apology would be, I'm sorry I broke my own rules. Etonians, Stephen says, Etonians are typical public school bullies. I was bug flushed and punished by some people that are now our government. You're genuinely sorry for something, you don't start deflecting. Yes. It's, if you're really sorry, you say, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I'm sorry. That's it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the harm caused. And then you stop. You don't say, I'm sorry, but you remember, there's a war on, or remember, it's a difficult time, or remember, this, that, or the other. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry, I was choking on something there. Boris Johnson's revenge. So I'll show you this funny video, and then we'll be back in a moment with some more serious stuff.
Colin is in Portsmouth. Hello, Colin.
Why hasn't anyone realised there's a war on?
Well, we have realised, Colin. Everyone's talking about it. We're doing everything we can to help.
No, I'm talking about in this country, the culture war.
Well, there's not really a war per se, is it, Colin? It's just silly.
That's typical of the left, isn't it? Not even realising they're in a war. You'll never win if you don't know you're fighting.
Well, okay, so this is all about blue passports and wearing masks and trans bathrooms. Rwanda, Colin, Rwanda.
No, it's about where we're going as a country, mate. It's about what we stand for.
But do you personally stand for every single one of those things, Colin?
Oh, personally, no. For example, I actually think that families should live on more than a 50p bag of pasta. But those are where the lines have been drawn. I just look at what people on my side say, and I angrily repeat it.
But why are you so keen to defend things you're not 100% sure about, Colin?
Because that's how you win a war. You don't question the generals. And if the General tells me I should burn Marks and Spencer to the ground because their Percy Pig sweets have been endorsed by Gary Neville, then I'm going out to buy matches, ain't I? And a gun if I need one.
Okay, so say it does actually come to a war. I'm clearly your enemy. Would you kill me, Colin?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. I'd have no choice but to bayonet you. But, I mean, I wouldn't enjoy it. Don't take it personally.
Right. Rather you kill me, Colin, I guess, than, say, Nadine Dorris.
Yeah, I'd be less sexy about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, mate, always a pleasure chatting to you. Thanks for having me on. Love to the family.
Thank you.
I'd kill you, but love to the family. Okay, wonderful. Let's move on from one joke to another joke. Jacob Rees-Mogg. Oh my goodness. So civil service unions condemn Jacob Rees-Mogg's vindictive back to office drive. Civil service unions have condemned a vindictive move by Efficiency Minister. Yes. I still struggle to get past that part. Efficiency Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg to name and efficiency, the guy who campaigned for a no deal Brexit. Can you imagine the damage that would have done? Anyway, Efficiency Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg to name and shame Whitehall departments with the highest rates of working from home as part of a new drive to encourage staff back to work. So if you don't go back to work, you're going to be named and shamed. Why? What's the problem with Whitehall staff working from home? Honestly, what's the problem with that? Is that on the surface you think, okay, if these people are, if their quality of work has dropped, then you could say, okay, you need to come back to the office. But this isn't the case. This is all about what? It's about forcing people back into city centres, back into offices. Why? Because people who generally support the Conservative Party are likely to be renting property. Okay? And if office space is premium, these people make a lot of money. But if office space is no longer required, what happens? Rents go down. Because if there's a glut, there's an oversupply of office space, then the price drops. So, the way the market works. So these people lose out. These people see their profits drop from very high in late 2019 to very low in 2020, and it's barely recovering. More and more people are returning to offices, but some people are not. And as I've said before, I think it should be optional for people. Do you want to return to the office? Yes, some people would prefer to work in an office. Some people maybe at home they don't have the proper space. If you're living in a small flat, you don't have a lot of space. Maybe it's easier to organize yourself. Maybe if you're working in the office, you can focus better. There are less distractions. But this should always be optional. But people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who maybe have property rented out and they're making a lot of money from that and are seeing a dip at the moment, or people who support him or donate to the Conservative Party are seeing a dip, and they want to force people back into the office. Because if the offices refill up again, real estate rental prices go up or return to the way they were before, and they're making profits again. Now, they don't care about the staff. They don't care about the quality of living of these people. They don't care about the pandemic. That's all secondary. It says here also, Rees-Mogg has circulated a league table of 16 Whitehall departments of office occupancy in an attempt to end civil servants working from home. The Department of Education topped, of course, the Department of Education. He wants it all, he doesn't want a department. He just wants private schools. Topped Rees-Mogg's working from home league table with 25% of staff working coming into the office at the 1st of April. It was followed by the Department for Work and Pensions, 27%, and the Foreign Office, 33%. The figures for the first working week of April were attached to a letter attached to a letter to all permanent secretaries urging them to encourage staff back into the office. David Penman, the General Secretary of the FDA, representing senior civil servants, reacted with fury to the letter and the league table. He said, "It's ludicrous that civil servants are being counted with clickers. Ministers should be concentrating on what's being delivered, not numbers at desks." Yes, this guy claims to be the minister. He was appointed the Minister for Efficiency, and he's demanding that permanent secretaries, instead of actually delivering policy, are checking numbers. That's not their job. So how is that efficient? So imagine you whatever job you're doing, imagine your boss comes in and says, "Okay, I want you to stop doing what you're doing, and I want you to go outside and count the number of cars there are in the car park. Doesn't matter how long it takes, I want you to do that." And if it doesn't matter if your efficiency at work drops, if your productivity drops, that doesn't matter. I want you to count the cars in the car park. George, thanks so much for that super chat. Anything that Jacob Rees-Mogg says is ultimately for profit. Yes. Yes, that's it. It's about people making money. It's not about the quality of work. It's not about the work-life balance. It's about forcing people into the office because it drives up prices of rental space, and it also benefits the economy in the city centre. Okay, bars, restaurants, shops, they need to continue to make money, and the small business owners are more likely, not always, but more likely to vote Conservative. And if they see Jacob Rees-Mogg forcing people back into city centres, they're making more money and they're going to continue to vote for the Conservative Party. And in some cases, donate to them. Thanks for that super chat. The General Secretary of the Public and Communications Service Union, PCS, Mark Serwatka, said these comments from Jacob Rees-Mogg and his Conservative colleagues are a slap in the face to the PCS members who worked tirelessly to who made immense sacrifices during the pandemic. For over 2 years, often under government's own instruction, many of our members have demonstrated that they do their job from home. The suggestion that they're just sitting at home is deeply insulting. And people are actually, in a sense, more controlled when they're at home than when they're in the office. Because if you're in the office, your boss has to, in most cases, get up, walk around to see if people are working. Well, generally, if you are working from home, you can be completely monitored because they can see if you're logged in, when you log out. They can see how often you do meetings with the webcam. There's a lot of tracking software that monitors you much more working from home, in a sense, than actually in the office. Stephen, thanks so much for that super chat. Sure should sponge £8 million for their house like he did. Yes. Oh, yes. Jacob Rees-Mogg on that £8 million. How many houses does he have now? And which of them belong? So, wasn't it he bought the ex-Tory headquarters and then he got some money, it seems. I think. He got a loan from a company that he set up. It's all very strange, all very fishy. The most occupied Whitehall office in Jacob Rees-Mogg's table was the Department for International Trade at 73%, followed by the Department of Health and Social Care at 72%. I don't know how these offices work. I don't know how many staff are in these offices. That's also important to remember. So, and in some offices you don't need access to face-to-face meetings. Most of the meetings can be done online. But once again, it shows contempt for the workers. That's what the Tories are all about. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, being the Victorian version of that. James Gillian, thanks so much for that super chat. I'm beginning to really wish that the secular theocratic Britain led by the Archbishops, the Archbishops of Canterbury and York, and the Board of Deputies would be the best for us right now. Yes. It's quite surprising to a certain extent, but not completely, but it's quite surprising the backlash that the Archbishop of Canterbury received, because he stood up for refugees. You know, he received a backlash from the Tories, from Tory MPs, but also the right-wing media. Of course, they called him woke and stuff like that, and they said, oh, he should be focusing on falling numbers of in his congregation than these issues. Can you imagine if he had come out the other way? What would they be saying? Wonderful, see, Boris Johnson has the backing of the church. If the Archbishop of Canterbury had come out and said, yeah, Priti Patel is doing a good job, they'd be worshipping him. They'd be saying, yeah, well, isn't it great that Boris Johnson, see? And if you were to suggest that maybe the church should not be getting involved, they'd be telling you, it's an institution, it's a British institution. Yes, it's not politically. It's how would they try to sell it? The right wing media. It's standing up for British values or something like that. So they have every right to stand up for British values, but as soon as they criticise the government, they shouldn't be poking their nose into politics. It's always the same. Thanks so much, James. Whoops, we have a super chat from DC. Great to see you once again, DC. Hope you're well tonight. Hi, Max. In your opinion, which will happen first, Scottish independence or Irish reunification? I think you asked me this question before, and while the situation tends to change, tends to remain the same, I think we're getting closer to Scottish independence, definitely. I don't know if you saw polls recently, but support for Irish reunification or unification has dropped somewhat, and I think it's because we're talking more about it. So when it's far out, when it's more abstract, support can be quite strong for it. Yeah, I like the idea of that. But then the devil is always in the details. So the more you go into the detail of these things, the economic arguments are presented, the political consequences are presented, then support for it it doesn't drop completely, but it tapers off. And that's perfectly acceptable, because asking somebody, would you like X? Most people will answer yes or no. If you give more details of what X is, then you're going to get a more detailed answer, and maybe a more accurate answer than the first one given. But we've seen with Scottish independence it's slightly different, because we've been talking about Scottish independence for a long time, and parties like the SNP and others have been doing a lot of the explaining. So it's not like Brexit, which came out of the blue in a sense. Scottish independence has been on the horizon for a long time, and people have a better understanding of what comes after. What comes after Scottish independence. It's not like Brexit, where nobody really knew what would happen after Brexit. Even the Brexiteers didn't know what was going to happen. But with Scottish independence, you can sort of see. Of course, there are uncertainties, but that's for another day. But generally, you can sort of understand. Okay, Scotland would become independent. It would be similar to Ireland in a way. It's likely to rejoin the EU or join the EU, whichever is the better verb to use. And you can understand what it would be like, because Scotland used to be a member. So. But there are uncertainties, of course, but it's easier to see Scottish independence than something like Irish reunification, because there are a lot more questions to be asked there. What would happen to Stormont? What would happen to unionist politicians, unionist parties? Would they be absorbed into the mainstream Irish parties? The unionist identity. How would loyalists respond to that? So you don't have these types of questions when it comes to Scottish independence. So so let me answer your question, because you asked me a question. I would say Scottish independence is closer because there's likely a referendum next year in 2023, and if it if the result is positive for independence, then the work will begin, and it will happen, but you would have a clearer time frame. So there would be probably negotiations, trade negotiations. There would be some sort of withdrawal agreement between Westminster and Scotland. A bit like the withdrawal agreement Britain had with the European Union. There'll be negotiations, what remains part of the United Kingdom, what things are shared, maybe how a border will work, things like that. But those are things for another day. Thanks for that super chat. We have another super chat from the Tomalig. Thanks so much for that. £2. Great for that. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. No comment, but thanks for that. But just back to what Jacob Rees-Mogg is saying. Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, wants to force people back into the office because they're going to spend money in their local economy, prop up the rental prices, because they want, if you look at rental prices, not just for homes, but also commercial properties in London, for example, they are extremely expensive. But also this idea that, many people, and this is something really positive that people don't really talk about when we talk about working from home. Many people who used to live in city centres, they would pay huge amounts of money for rent. Now, if they can work from home, they can decide, okay, I'm not going to rent. Yes, I'm going to continue to rent, but I'm going to pay less rent if I go outside the city, because I don't need to commute. I can use my internet connection. So I can work from home. I save money on travel, but I also can find a place that is cheaper to rent outside the city, or maybe if I'm lucky, I can buy something outside the city, something with a garden, a bit more a quieter area, not in the city centre where it's noisy and busy, a quieter life, and I connect to the workplace using my internet connection. This should be an option for all. Some jobs, of course, you can't outsource that. You can't disconnect in this way. Or you can't, remotely work. If you're a plumber or electrician, some sort of manual work, you can't do that. But in a lot of cases, I think most office work can be done remotely. And with the new technologies and new tools getting better all the time, it makes sense. But it doesn't if you're trying to keep the price of rent up. That's what you want to avoid. And you'll happily donate to the Conservative Party to make sure that we encourage people to return to the office. Hey DC, thanks so much for that super chat. If you can, Max, please do a feature on Gibraltar. I feel it will probably go independent in the future or move closer to the EU. Thank you so much, DC. So I'll take a note of that, because it is an interesting with my quill. It is an interesting scenario. Whoops, the pen fell on the floor. It is an interesting scenario because it's part of Schengen, and it's, in a sense, it's moving further away from the UK. Gibraltar is a very interesting location because the expat community there, but they have intermixed in a sense with Spanish culture, with Spain. A lot of people who live in Gibraltar work in Spain, and it's not as closed off as people imagine it is. It is much more integrated into Spain than it appears, and I think it's eventually going to become maybe part of Spain. Its strategic value isn't the same as it was in the past, and it's not like Northern Ireland. It's not winning the Tories a lot of votes. Maybe from a sort of nostalgic point of view, if they were to give it away, many Tories would be upset, but it would be from a sort of cultural point of view that they would be angry about it. Scotland needs to become a Commonwealth country, independent submarine base and Balmoral business as usual as places in the Commonwealth, Cyprus and Malta, RAF and naval bases. Lovely comment. This is the first time I've caught you live. Hey, Saint Ledger, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Thanks for coming on tonight. A lot of people... Max dropped his quill. It was a heavy quill. A quill that rolled. No carpets, nice. No, it's... the floor is parquet. Sort of little wooden sheets. Not solid wood. No, not here. Don't need carpet. Carpet is not here in Italy. We don't have carpets really at all. Attracts too much dust as well. Especially if you have pets. I have pets, so carpet is not a good idea. So let's move on. Moving away from Jacob Rees-Mogg to, of course, the cost of energy and the cost of living crisis. It says here, energy chiefs fear 40% of Britons could fall into fuel poverty in truly horrific winter. So we've heard from Martin Lewis, who was talking about in October, November, the price, the cap on fuel price will increase once again, and this will mean that more and more people are exposed to higher prices as we move into the next winter. Winter is far away at the moment, but it's still a concern. As many as 4 in 10 people in Britain could fall into fuel poverty when the price cap rises again in this autumn. Energy bosses have told MPs that they called for the government's support for vulnerable households to facing a truly horrific winter. Michael Lewis, the chief executive of E.ON UK, said between 30 and 40% of people in Britain might go into fuel poverty from October, when the industry regulator Ofgem is again expected to put up the annual rate on tariffs. We're expecting a severe impact on customers' ability to pay, he told MPs at the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee in Parliament, adding that he expects debts of customers to rise by 50% or £800 million. He said a large number of people moving into fuel poverty would lead to a significant increase in bad debt. Customers have been calling energy providers, expressing their worry at the huge increase in their bills. Scottish Power alone has received 8,000 calls from customers concerned about their ability to pay. Its chief executive, Keith Anderson, told MPs. He said there was he was massively concerned for people facing rising bills who would really, really struggle, and called for an introduction of a £1,000 deficit fund or social tariff for vulnerable customers. And this is a good idea. At least provide some sort of financial support, so when the bills do come in, they have something to pay against them. The fund would take £1,000 off the bills of the poorest people in the country in October, and the government or consumers would then pay this off over 10 years, he suggested. So, in a way, so the poorest people would have their bills reduced by 1,000, and then people who could pay would pay a bit more, and the government would pay a bit more as well. The energy regulator lifted the price cap on bills earlier this month, sending the average household dual fuel tariff from £1,278 to £1,971. That is due to increase in October, with some experts expecting the price cap to hit £2,600. Come October, we're going to get horrific. It's going to get horrific, totally horrific, said Anderson. It has got to the stage where the size and scale of it is beyond what I can deal with, beyond what I think the industry can deal with. I think it needs a massive shift, a significant shift in government policy and approach towards this. The EDF chief executive, Simone Rossi, said it had seen a 40% increase in calls from consumers worried about debt. We are concerned about what is in front of us, he said. Unfortunately, prepaid customers are being hit first, but now see bills being higher for longer. So I would expect government to reassess in short order to see what is possible. But once again, the government don't seem to care, because Rishi Sunak was talking about giving a £200 loan to people. So you can't pay your bills. Well, we're going to give you a loan that you'll have to pay back after. So I think the idea of giving a sort of a cut of £1,000 to the poorest in society, the ones who have to decide between eating and heating, and then shifting the burden onto people who can afford. Look, if there are people on universal credit, they shouldn't be, if you're on universal credit, it means that you're already struggling. So those people should be supported. There are also people who are not on universal credit. It could be means tested for those. I don't like the idea of means testing, but it doesn't make sense to give this support to everyone, especially as many people don't need it. So it's better to organize the money and pay off the bills for the most vulnerable. And I think it's quite easy for the government at the moment to understand who would actually need this. If people are in receipt of universal credit or legacy payments, then they should be the first to receive it. My dual fuel direct debit doubled at the beginning of April. You and me. Surely this is the time for a massive investment in renewable energy. Saint Ledger, it is. But a lot of the investment will take time, and people will see the benefits of it in a few years' time. But the Tories don't want to do that, and they don't want to help out people in the short term either. You need a two-tier approach. You need to help out people immediately by providing them with the cash to pay their bills. And at the same time, you need to invest in refurbishing houses, insulating them, a shift to renewables. One of the things about nuclear is that my concern is, apart from the waste and the risk of accident, is who would the Tories give this contract to? They'd give it to one of their mates. And then you would have the risk of waste not being disposed of correctly, and the risk of meltdowns because corners were cut, because the people who won the contract used to make diesel generators for building sites or something like that. Yes, it's close enough, no? The gas prices, it has dropped 50% since its height. It's just now under the price of when the Russia-Ukraine war kicked off. So Europe's spending 500 million on Russian gas. So gas prices have dropped, but that doesn't mean that people. Why aren't people seeing it in their bills? Why hasn't it filtered down? Maybe it's because somebody's shafting the customer. Nuclear takes too long and is too expensive. Yeah, it takes 10 years at least to build one of these plants, and they're extremely expensive, and then there are security concerns. And as I said, when it comes to the likes of the Tories, who's going to win the contract? Whoever donated to the Conservative Party. It's one of the reasons I wouldn't like, and I wouldn't be very happy with certain Italian companies setting up doing this. If the mafia are involved, you're going to see a disaster further down the road using cheap material. Or I hope that would not be the case. But look at what happened with PPE, for example, in the UK. Who won the contracts? Donors of the Conservative Party. There were companies who could make PPE. They were ignored. Contracts were given to people who had no business in dealing with PPE. Okay, guys, I want to move on to what's happening in Ukraine, and then we'll speak a little bit about Priti Patel as well. Just here, Biden allies consult on Ukraine, including aid. So, aboard Air Force One, U.S. President Joe Biden and allied leaders discussed ongoing efforts on Ukraine on Tuesday, including the need to provide economic and humanitarian aid, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters. Psaki briefed reporters as Biden flew into New Hampshire on a day trip, said Biden and the allies also discussed efforts to hold I was going to say Johnson. Hold Russia. Oh my god. That was a bit too much on the nose, I think. Hold Russia accountable for the invasion of Ukraine. So we will see. We will see. Hopefully we're going to see some movement here. But the situation in Donbass is terrible. Russia has organized a massive invasion here of Donbass. They're shelling the hell out of the place, and at least one city has already fallen to the Russians. It says here Russia offers, this is just from about half an hour ago, 40 minutes ago. Russia offers Mariupol ceasefire so Ukrainians can surrender. The Russian Defense Ministry said it will offer a ceasefire in Mariupol on Wednesday to allow Ukrainian defenders holed up in the Azovstal steelworks to lay down their arms. But the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has promised that his forces in Mariupol would fight to the end and ignore any surrender ultimatums from Russia. So Russia has said, yeah, if you see a problem for Russia, so obviously what's happening in Mariupol is catastrophic, but it's holding up certain Russian forces that Putin would like to have engaged in the Battle of Donbass. And the fact that Mariupol has not fallen is a problem for the Russians. They would like to see that city fall so they can use those resources to fight in Donbass. And the Ukrainian forces are really giving the Russians hell there. They're running out of ammunition, running out of resources, but they're not surrendering. And the longer they hold out, the more difficult it is for the Russians to organize battles elsewhere. It says here, Ukrainian journalist sentenced to 6 years in a Russian labor camp will be honored next month at a gala event in the US by a literary and human rights advocacy group, PEN America. Boris Johnson reiterated a critical need for further military support for Ukraine in his earlier video call with Joe Biden and other world leaders. Downing Street's account of the video call was broadly similar to the statement from the White House, which said the Allies reaffirmed their commitment to support Ukraine as it faced a Russian onslaught in the east of the country. And a number of leaders were involved there. Let me read some of your comments, guys. A Russian ceasefire is a kill box. Lessons learned, yes. Ukrainians want to see Putin's head on a stick, so Putin needs to surrender. Why don't the French call him Putin instead of Putain? His first contact with the nuclear plant was gone to Mr. Burns of Springfield. Yes. The last troops are linked to the very far right party. They styled themselves on 1930s Germany. Yes, that's true. Miles, hey again, Max. Enjoying your videos at the moment. Hey chat, great to have you on, Miles. Hope you're well. Do you know what's happening in China yet? So in China, they're imposing a zero COVID policy, and it seems they've locked down Shanghai. And I don't know much more about that. You were seeing images online of protests, the police arresting people, a very heavy-handed approach to this, because new variants are springing up and they want to deal with them. I don't know if this is the right approach. It seems that they want to do it to protect the healthcare system. They're afraid that it could collapse if it's not dealt with, if this problem is not dealt with. But it is concerning. How fast does a nuke fly? Could we shoot it down before it left Russia? No. Russia has developed a hypersonic missile that could include a nuclear warhead on it. It travels at something like 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers an hour or miles an hour, something like that. I think it's 4,000 kilometers an hour, which is extremely fast, and it's faster than anything you could use to shoot down. Now, allegedly, they have already used such a device in Ukraine, but they probably have very limited supply of this. They may only have 1 or 2 working pieces. So I don't know if they would, and we don't know how accurate it is. So it could be extremely fast, but not very reliable at hitting a target. But I don't see Russia, and I hope I'm correct on this, I don't see Russia engaging in some sort of atomic war. That would be very worrying, of course. Russia expels more European diplomats. I didn't know there were still any foreign diplomats in Russia. Anyway, so this is, unfortunately, the situation in Ukraine in the east is going to, while the situation in the west and north is getting better, the situation in the east is going to get worse. Well, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to show you this clip. Our friend Priti Patel.
I'd like to make a statement on the United Kingdom's approach to the global migration challenge. The United Kingdom has a long and proud history of offering sanctuary to refugees. In recent years alone, we have welcomed more than 185,000 people through safe and legal routes, including from Syria, Hong Kong, Afghanistan, and more recently, Ukraine. In addition, we have welcomed more than 40,000 people in recent years through our refugee family reunion routes. This government has done more than any other in recent history to support those fleeing persecution, conflict or instability. But we cannot focus our support on those who need it most or effectively control our borders without tackling illegal migration.
How is it illegal? I talked about this before on the channel. What is your definition of illegal migration?
Which, Mr. Speaker, is facilitated by people smugglers, serious organised criminals that profit from human misery, who do not care about people drowning in the channel or suffocating in the back of containers. We must break their lethal and evil business model by removing the demand for their repugnant activities.
We know how to end this method is by providing safe and legal routes, but you don't want to do that.
This type of illegal migration puts unsustainable pressures on our public services and local communities.
No, it does not. If you don't fund these public services enough, now when she's talking about public services, she's talking about the hospitals or schools, but they're not under strain. If they are, it's because the Tories have underfunded them for decades. Or for a decade at least. So schools are underfunded, and then you turn around and say, well, look at all these immigrants coming in because the schools can't cope. But are you going to provide these schools with funding, more funding? No. We've seen it already when it came to public school versus state school. Private school versus state school. The private schools are receiving more and more, their income is going up, while the money that public, I keep saying public school, in Britain public school is private school, state schools receive is gone down. It's increased slightly, but there's a huge margin between the money that private schools have and state schools don't have.
Every day, the broken asylum system costs the taxpayer almost £5 million in hotel accommodation alone. The cost of the asylum system is the highest in over 2 decades at over £1.5 billion. And as the Prime Minister, Mr.
1.5 billion. You make it sound like it's a lot of money. You know, it's like half of one of these contracts that were given out for PPE.
Speaker said last week, we cannot sustain a parallel illegal system. Our compassion may be infinite, but our capacity to help people is not. But this is why the new plan for immigration and its legislative vehicle, the Nationality and Borders Bill, are so vital. And once again, I urge honourable members, but also members in the other place, to follow this elected House in backing the bill. At the heart of this government's approach is a simple principle, Mr. Speaker: fairness. Access to the UK's asylum system should be based. Access to the UK's asylum system should be based on need, not on the ability to pay people smugglers.
But what if somebody needs to get to the UK and they need to pay a people smuggler because they can't find any other way to the UK? Like, if you go to... Just try this yourself. Try and book a flight without a passport. Try and do it. Try and get through a security check without a proper passport. Without a visa. These are the legal routes. If you want to get into the UK, you have to go through legal routes. You have to go through safe routes. But if they are cut off, then what other way can you get in? Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. Public figures should be banned from making dishonest, inaccurate statements like this. Criminal. Yes. What's the point of the House of Commons if she's able to make these sort of statements?
Mr. Speaker, more than 80 million people around the world are displaced. Others are on the move because they want a better life. There is a global migration crisis that demands innovative and international solutions, and this government is taking firm action. When I published the new plan for immigration back in March last year, we set out 3 very...
Okay, I think you have had enough of her and I have had enough of her because she's just frustrating to listen to. A very angry, xenophobic individual who holds power at the moment. She lied to Theresa May. She was fired for lying to Theresa May. And she was welcomed into Boris Johnson's circle. She paid somebody off because she bullied them. Didn't want to go to court, so she paid them off. Using taxpayer money, of course. And she kept her job. She'll be one of them that will go when Boris Johnson goes. Unfortunately, that's when it's going to happen. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat. Greatly appreciated. Remember, we have our post-stream chat after the stream tonight. And I'll see you on Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel. But before we finish, we always have our one for the road, which I hope you'll enjoy. Tomorrow is going to be interesting. Prime Minister's questions, as far as another Prime Minister's questions tomorrow. Boris Johnson will have to face the music once again. And there is a vote on Thursday. Hopefully this vote will go ahead on Thursday to investigate whether Boris Johnson should face a committee and answer questions on whether he lied to Parliament. So let's enjoy the video before we finish tonight.
We're outsourcing our asylum system because we all know that outsourcing works brilliantly. Does it? Yes, because if anything goes wrong, we can say it's not our fault. And as a bonus, we also get to outsource our morality. Why did you choose to send people to Rwanda? It's far away and won't tolerate nonsense, a bit like my boarding school. But presumably you were allowed home from school. Less than you'd think. Not that it did me any harm. Empathy's overrated. Can you tell us a bit about Rwanda, its population, its life expectancy? Look, clearly in Africa there are many countries in Africa, and this one's at the forefront. Do you know anything about the place? Of course I do. Rwanda, officially the Republic of Rwanda, is a landlocked country in the Great Rift Valley, where the African Great Lakes region and East Africa converge. Are you reading that from Wikipedia? No? Are you sure? Citation needed. Look, the important thing is that we're closing down the people traffickers. How? By stealing their business model. You're going to face legal challenges. I hope so. Those lefty lawyers will give us some great headlines. And look, we're only sending migrants to Rwanda for processing. And then if they are found to be genuine refugees, they'll be given asylum? Yes, in Rwanda. A place some of them might have fled from. But now they'll be refugees, and we have a guarantee they'll be treated well. Who told you that? The Rwandan government, led by Paul Kagame, an authoritarian who's been accused of murder. That's the chap. Isn't this all going to be very expensive? You can't put a price on doing the right wing thing. What? Look, I keep hearing objections to our plan, but what's the alternative? Well, I guess you could fund the asylum system properly, employ more people to process claims so that refugees aren't left waiting for months or even years and decide that they have to take drastic action. Yes, I suppose we could do that, but that wouldn't go down as well with our voters. Does the fact that you're trying to appeal to these specific voters ever give you pause? No. The policy is, of course, focused on men from Africa and the Middle East. Isn't it just racist? What? Are you saying that just to make it fair, we should also send a few French backpackers to Rwanda? Actually, that would go down very well. Let me make a note. Thank you, Minister. Next up, as Elon Musk announces that he wants to buy Twitter, we ask, what's the most expensive way you've ever avoided doing something helpful with your money?
Wonderful. Well done, Matt Green, once again. So, guys, have a great evening. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. And stay safe. As always, take care. Good night.